Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Here in part two, we'll finish up with Kerry Green, talking running in the 70s, 5 decades of running the Boston Marathon, and more stories from college days and beyond. Kerry Green, part 2. Enjoy.
Yeah, a couple of Jim Wooding stories, just because, any guy that goes to IUP and ends up in the Olympics, 7th overall in the decathlon in 1984, you got to tell a couple stories, right? Yeah. So one of them was, we're down at Arkadelphia, and just to show you the mindset of someone who's competitive. We all think we're a little competitive. To show you how ultra competitive he is, they do a thing called the Parade of States the very first day on the track when they're opening the meet. It's alphabetized. So you get back to P for Pennsylvania, and then all of us are grouped in a group under the P. And I was back in the group talking with some of the guys from Clarion and some of the guys from Edinburgh, and we're just chatting away. And then one of the guys goes, "Hey, Kerry, I think Wooding wants you." And I look up, and Jim's motioned me to come up, and I kind of wave and go, "I'll be up a little bit." And then I go back talking to these guys, and suddenly they go, "Kerry, I think Jim really wants you." I go, "Okay, I'll be right back." So I go over there, and I go, "Hey, Jim, what's up?" And he goes, "We're going to be first." And I go, "What?" He goes, "We're going to be first." I go, "First in what?" He goes, "In the Parade of States, you got to stay right here." I go, "What are you talking about? This isn't a competition." But I told those guys I'd be right back. I did not go back until we got through the Parade of States, because Jim wanted to be the first guy from Pennsylvania. And it was like, okay, think of that mindset, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember getting a flat tire on a track trip down south, and when he got out and somebody else had to change the tire, he just kicked him out of the way and manhandled it. And there's, "Let me show you how to change a tire." Yeah, I can do that. I can do this better.
What a guy. Yeah. And then got closer to graduation. This was late 77 then, hanging around the house there. And I said, "Hey, Jim, you get a little more serious." I said, "What are you going to do now you graduate?" He goes, "I'm going to substitute teach." And I go, "Why wouldn't you just, you'd be a great teacher and coach." And said, "Why wouldn't you just do that?" And he looks at me real serious. He goes, "I'm going to train." And I go, "Train for what?" And he goes, "The Olympics." And I go, "Like the Olympics and the decathlon? Are you kidding me?" God, hats off to you, buddy. Well, at that point, we're both thinking for the 1980 games, right?
Yeah.
So he trains his ass off for 3 years, and they cancel the 80 games. So what does he do? Instead of packing his bags and moving on, he trains for 4 more years, and he makes the damn team.
Yeah.
Hats off to the guy.
Yeah, I wonder what he would have done in 80. I don't know that he got any better with 4 years. He didn't lose anything, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder now. Yeah.
When you mention 80 like that, I always feel sorry for people like Craig Virgin and Tony Sandoval, who was a marathoner, were like at the peak years. And there was a gymnast named Kurt Thomas. Another one, too, was that Ronaldo Nehemiah. Those guys all would have been gold medals across the board, and it was taken away from them. And the really outstanding is it was taken away from because Russia had invaded Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And we just spent 20 years in Afghanistan.
Yeah, crazy world. The politics of that. What did you see as you moved through Boston changing? What was your experience in the community of Boston marathoners?
One is they changed the qualifying time. So for years, you had to run under 250 to qualify. I had friends that would run 254, 253, 255, and they're working their butt off. No way. And then I think Boston realized what a moneymaker they had on their hands. Remember I said early on there were no T-shirts and jackets and hats and all that stuff. As a matter of fact, Mike Higgins, who professionally started his career up in Rochester, New York, he would show up to Boston. And this was, I want to say 81, 82, with a bunch of guys from Rochester. And I vividly remember there was one guy that would come up every year with a couple boxes full of T-shirts, and how he funded his trip he would go out to a street corner and just start selling Boston Marathon shirts. And that's how he funded his trip. Because again, it wasn't the marketing thing that it was. And then when they realized the money they could make, they brought the qualifying times up to basically you're jogging now to get the qualifying times. And so instead of getting the people they had to run 5,000, now they cut it off like at 30,000 or something, because they can get dramatically more people. And the money that it makes with selling the T-shirts, the jackets, the hats, and all that stuff is just over the top. And then there's TV money now and all that. So those things all changed. And I think the peak year was 83 as far as the number of guys that ever broke in one race, 220, 230, 240, 250. Because I remember that race. I ran my PR at 226 again, which is the same thing I ran back in what was 78. And I was not in the top 200.
Wow.
If you look almost up any marathon now, including like the Olympics and Olympic trials, whatever, you run 226, you're in the top 200. You're in the top
Yeah.
100 makes
Yeah.
Boston, New York easily.
Jeez. What did you do then? How many times did you run Boston, New York? You have these great streaks of not only running them, but running them for time.
Yeah, the one thing I regret, and I always congratulate Abbott on this, Abbott ran 25 in a row. So he's a member of what they call the quarter century club. He ran Boston 25 years in a row. And I was one that once I started to break 230, if I wasn't really fit, I would think, I'm not going to go up this year. And it was wrong. I should have gone anyway and just run through it and enjoyed it. Because the whole weekend is, to me, like for a runner, it's like Christmas in April. You have certain patterns of restaurants and bars you go to and people, and it's just a joyous 4 or 5 days. We're up there just celebrating life with people. And a lot of the IUP guys, that's where you would meet annually just to catch up. Guys that I knew from Athens, and once I got jobs at a hospital in Zanesville, Ohio, and then in Mansfield, you would just meet up with old friends, and it was just great times to do that again and again. You had the enthusiasm of doing the race, but it was almost like the race was secondary with who you would meet. And then always meet new people. Like even now going out to the Olympic trials, when we go out to Eugene, I've met a lot of the younger IUP guys through the decades. And that again goes to show you how much that CC house played a role in people's lives. It started in 74, meeting up with guys like Schaefer and Rogo, who were there in the late 80s and early 90s. Through the 2000s. It's just good people. And like I said, it just makes life wonderful to be able to link that back to the IUP days, no matter what years they were there.
The IUP cross country house, did you live in it 4 years?
Just shy of that. My senior year, I came back and did student teaching at Richmond High School, actually. So I just lived at home in Johnstown. But yeah, so it was the fall 74 through the fall of 77.
And it was about 10 people could fit in there.
Yeah. That's the other funny thing is that when I finally got to the point where I got the back house, remember the little shack and back?
Oh, yeah, the secondary.
So I had that solo, and then we have big powwow with the 3 guys that own the house, and they go, hey, this next semester, we're not only going to raise the rent, but we're also going to put another person in that back house. And that's when Ken Trilly and I roomed together back there. Yeah. And I guess over years, because I learned this from Rogo, at some point, what used to be the dining room where we'd have like our group meals together, they turned that into a bedroom. So they got like an 11th and 12th bunk unit. Yeah.
Wow. And it lasted, do you know when they took it down?
The only thing I remember was I went back for the retirement for Raymore and Fry. It was 2009. Yeah. And one of the first things I wanted to do was go over and check where the CC house was and get a photo. And it was a parking lot. So I'm not sure if it was like 2007 or 2008. But and just wonderful people. And this is another funny story. I hate to go off on these tangents, but around 2008, I was over the cardiovascular services at our hospital. So you always had salespeople coming in selling you machines for echoes or stress testing or vascular studies. And one day this guy comes in and he's selling cardiac monitoring equipment like Holter monitors and EKG equipment. They start out, how you doing, blah, 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 getting to know each other. And he mentions he's from Western Pennsylvania. I say, oh, I went to IUP. And he goes, IUP? He goes, I went to IUP. So now we're starting to, I lived across country house. He goes, he met his wife at one of our parties.
Oh my God.
I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Because remember we had parties like every 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Yeah, those are the times, man.
Cost $1 to get in and open kegs. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I mean. I just so many fun memories from, obviously, you were one of all those, whether it was Mandel or Garfield or Bushy or Lamsey. There's just so many great folks and just good memories from their times there. And then you thank Ed Fry for his leadership, and a number of the professors I had were just good people.
Let's just talk about the science a little bit. What changed from your graduate school days to now in the science? How much has that all changed? The science of cardiovascular health, and everything else.
I think people now try to live healthier lifestyles. Just because I've lived my whole life, that the term wellness was coined in the 1970s. Okay. So if you think about this, so you think about all the things we've done and think how road racing has expanded and all the different CrossFits and Planet Fitnesses and all that stuff. Okay. But this is fascinating. Disney World opened in 1970, okay, in Orlando. And one of the rides they build is called It's a Small World, okay?
Yeah.
So the average, in 1970, the average guy in America weighed 168 and the average woman weighed 132, okay? And where I'm going with this is the obesity epidemic, all right?
Yeah.
So by the time we got to 1990, I'm starting to get articles across my desk saying obesity is a problem in America. Okay. Now we go to the 2000, 2001, 2002, and now they replace the word problem with this has become an epidemic in America.
Yeah.
Okay. Now going back to my Disney World example. So by the time you get to the mid 2000s, they had to close down the ride because the boats that went through the moat in the It's a Small World deal would get stuck because they would just drag on the bottom. Because when they originally built these boats to go through the moat, the average guy weighs 168, the average woman weighs 132.
Yeah.
And then you factor up from that by about 100 pounds. They didn't factor up by 200, 250 pounds. So now the average guy weighs just at about 200. The average woman weighs about 168. And then, but just to show you how general, so you think we're doing all these great things, we're moving forward, but the rise in diabetes, the rise in a lot of those high blood pressure, those kind of things continues to climb. On a more elite level, one of the changes that I knew I did in my life back in the 70s, we were experimental because the whole thing was mileage, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly it was 70 miles a week, then 80, then 100. I remember my senior year, I was averaging 110 miles a week. And then when I got into the workaday world, so my two fastest marathons were at Boston, one in 78, the other in 83, 226. But I did one of those on 110 miles a week, the other on 55 miles a week.
Wow.
So what I learned was if I had to do it all over again, I would never have done 2 a days because I really think that morning run was, in my case, not necessary. It just breeded more injuries or more issues. I would have run
and less sleep.
Yeah, exactly right. So recovery, all those things, and I would have thrown in a little bit of strength training, more stretching. So the way I look at it now, my formula now would be 5 days a week, and the 2 off days you do some strength training, get to the gym and do that kind of thing. And include a couple of days with a little bit of up tempo stuff where you're going a little quicker. So it's not just mile and miles, but yeah, so you learn as you go. But the one thing I'm fascinated about that I haven't taken advantage of or even tried are the shoes. And I never thought in my life that they would allow carbon plates in shoes. I thought they'll improve on the foam, but not the carbon. I never heard of the carbon plate thing until 2016 or whatever. And I'm just amazed that they allowed that to go because it just seems like that's obviously, it's one thing to absorb shock with the foam. It's another thing to have propulsion. And I haven't tried the shoes, I'll say that. But when you look at even just this year, the number of guys breaking 4-minute miles, I think, was it University of Washington that had 8 guys in one race.
Jeez. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Matt Simmons did a video. He got a pair of the shoes and ran a downhill and did a 4-minute mile. And he said, I can't run a 4-minute mile anymore. I'm going to run downhill, but let me show you how these shoes perform. And he took 10, 12 seconds off his best mile time that he was running at that point with the Carbon Fly shoes. Yeah.
Wow. One of the guys in the 5-decade club is a professor at MIT, and he's a real analytical kind of person. This is just, I wanted to say 2 years ago. I remember he posted this on Facebook, but he got some of the, Vaporfly, or 4%. And he just had a very flat stretch of a path that he knew was exactly a mile that he runs quite a bit. And he goes, I haven't broken 6 minutes in a mile in 3 or 4 years. And he went out in those shoes and knocked out like a 5:55, a 5:54, a 5:53.
Wow.
And he goes, what can I tell you?
Yeah. The only thing that changed was the shoes. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of fascinating. You hate to be like the old guy, but it's just a weird thing. And like I said, it's enough beyond me and the way I'm running now that I don't need to purchase those. My main shoe now is either the Brooks Ghost is when I run in, but it's fun to just read about this other stuff.
Yeah. Talk in detail about the 5-decade club. It's a small group, and when did it get onto your radar? I
remember writing Andy Burfoot a note when he was at Runner's World back in 2007, because I realized at that time I was still running decent, and 2010 wasn't that far away. And when I wrote him the letter, and the other thing was, I thought it was enough out there where people had done it that I said, my goal is to run it at Boston 5 decades and New York at 5 decades, thinking that if you throw in any marathons, there's dozens of people that had done it. Yeah. But then as he researched it and other people researched it, we realized that there were only like I think 4 or 5 people prior to 2010 that had actually done it. So that was people prior to the running boom, because the running boom started with Schroeder in 72, winning the Munich Marathon, right?
Yep.
So that's when the masses started to do it. So before then, there just weren't that many people that were knocking out marathons. And most of them, when they did, they were young and fit. Then they got on with their real life, which is get a job, raise a family. And once they had, when they're late 20s, early 30s, they got away from banging those kind of miles out. But when we got in the 70s and 80s, people started to do it more as a lifestyle long term. So suddenly I knew in 2010 there were going to be more people aiming at this and trying to do it. But what we found was that there was only one guy that had ever done it at Boston, and he's not a household name. His name was Lawrence Olson, I believe. Lawrence Olson. He was from the Massachusetts area. He's the only guy that had ever done it at Boston. So that was the goal in 2010, to knock it out there. And I think there were 4 of us that day that got on there. But a lot of them weren't just doing it at Boston. They were including other marathons. Maybe they hadn't run Boston in 10 or 12, 15 years. And then one group of brothers did it. It was Doug Curtis and Dennis Curtis. And Doug Curtis was famous for running so many sub 220 marathons. I think he ran sub 220 like 80 plus times.
Yeah. When did you do your final ultra? Anything longer than a marathon?
I just did those 2 when I was at IUP. I did 76. We did the national championship, which was 5:55. And then John and I did the JFK, and that was 6 hours and 22 minutes over the Appalachian Trail there. And then it just realized to me there was a lot of pounding in that. And when you're used to running about 5:30 mile pace in a marathon, and then you're back off to 7 something, it was like, I don't know if I want to keep doing these slower things. So I just did the 2 of those. Yeah, I did not keep doing that.
And New York, you had hit 4 decades.
Yeah, New York was a snake bit thing. So I just figured, hey, 2010, I'll do Boston in the spring, New York in the fall. In that summer, I got injured. So that took New York out of the fall. So then 2 years later, I was traveling all over doing races just because I love to do that. And I got looking at this one. I called a friend, Mary. I said, hey, let's go out to Tahoe. They've got a thing called the trifecta. It's 3 half marathons in 3 days around Lake Tahoe. And so I not only did that, but I won the overall, which at that time I was 58. You're thinking, what are the chances of that? Because you're never lower than, the lake sits at 6,300 feet. So you're never lower than that. So you're running at altitude, and then at times you're 7,000 plus. But to top me, Mary did what was called the triple, which was 3 marathons in 3 days around Lake Tahoe. So you're like, hats off to you, Mary. You knocked that out in 3 days. Good for you. Coming off that, I think I'm really fit. Probably about 4 weeks later was the Columbus half marathon. That would have been a good barometer where do I stand. So I run an hour 23. I'm all set for New York, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what happened in 2012? Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you're at the expo at 5:30 on a Friday night, and I didn't have a cell phone at that time, but everyone's cell phone starts to go off. And I saw some friends, and they go, guess what? What? The race is canceled. I go, you got to be kidding me. No, the race is canceled. They're like, you're kidding me. It's nope. So there was no race in. So all these people start going on their phones looking for other races to run over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But that wasn't going to do me any good because I wanted to sub 3 at New York. And the funny thing was that Sunday morning, because we're all stuck in town, right? We're all running around Central Park just for a run. It's just packed with people. And it was a gorgeous day, like 40s. Yeah. Okay, so then now it goes to the next day. So 2 years later, okay, I'm ready. I'm entered New York. I'm going to do it. All psyched. I go back to Tahoe, do the trifecta again, win the overall. I'm 60 years old now. Come back, run. Oh, we also, because I was tying in my 60th, I got my brother to come out. And then from Tahoe, we went down to Yosemite. We hiked Half Dome.
Yeah, right.
Oh. So it was just, again, a celebration of turning 60, that kind of thing. And I was going to races around America. They were trying to relive old memories of places I've already been, like Pikes Peak or Boulder, or starting new memories by going to different other places. So now I'm fit. Now I'm ready to go to New York. And we got this brutal day where it was in the 30s. And you know how New York, again, is point to point. We got this headwind for the first 20 miles. Oh, and when I say headwind, 25 constant miles an hour with gusts up to 50. It was the most bizarre thing. And I remember talking to my brother the day before, and he goes, well, what are you going to do? And I go, I came here for one reason. So I went out, first 5K, 21:10. Second 5K, 21:10. Third 5K, I hit a portalet. And then once I got off pace at the portalet, in that wind, you were never gaining it back. Yeah. So I just ran the rest of the way, high-fiving people through the neighborhoods.
Ah,
having a bunch of laughs and enjoying it. So that was it. I just never got to make an honest attempt at knocking out the fifth decade at New York.
you did everything athletic you could, including juggling. What did you do with juggling in the running?
Yeah. You know how in your 20s and 30s, it's all about you're trying to set PRs, whether it's
Yep.
10Ks, 5Ks, I'm never into really 5Ks, but 10 milers, marathons, half marathons, whatever. But then suddenly Father Time taps you on the shoulder and you go, hey, your PR days are over, buddy. So shoot, what can I do to keep making this fun? And so now I'm probably like just about 40 now at that point, realizing PRs are behind me. And I thought, what would be fun? Just juggle a little bit. So probably the 3 days before I did Boston, I would go out on the country roads around Zanesville, Ohio, and I had a fanny pack. And when there were no cars coming, I'd whip out these 3 tennis balls and just juggle. And I was like, this isn't bad. I think this may work. After trying it for about 3 days, yeah, I think this is doable. So I go up to Boston, Abbott's up there and the whole crew that we always run with. And I go, hey, I'm going to try this. So they're all laughing, thinking, okay, whatever. So I kept them in the fanny pack until I got to about Natick, which is about 10 miles. And I thought, why don't we just try to break them out here and just get a feel for it? So you break them out. It was almost like you had a volume control on the fans because, they've just seen 20 minutes of people going by with real serious looks. And here comes this guy laughing and juggling. And it was like, boy, that was quite a reception. So then I got to, up the road, Wellesley, did it again. Boom. Okay, that worked out pretty nice. Now I put him back in the fanny pack and run. And then I thought, you got to juggle Heartbreak Hill. So I whipped him out, juggle Heartbreak Hill. This is going good. And so I probably juggled about 5 or 6 miles of the course and then did the whole final last mile. And then the crazy thing was it blew up because it was on the news that night. They would lead with the winning man, the winning woman, and the juggler. And it was like crazy. And then you go to those parties afterwards and they're showing highlights of the race. And then they would show the juggling thing. And then all these people go, that's him. And people come over and they go, well, what'd you run? I go, 244. And they go, you mean 344? And I go, no, 244. They go, no, you mean 344? I go, no, 244. Got it? And they're going, how'd you do that? I go, it's just been a hobby for years. But I said, I don't think I ran the whole course because it just, again, was too crowded early on and stuff. And then I did it again another year. But it was turned into a lot of fun. We just had a lot of fun with it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So good times.
On the passing of time and aging bodies and the community has lost people, you don't have to comment. We just lost Donnie Friedline. How did you know Bushy?
I'm still grieving, man.
Yeah.
I knew him from that. We lived together, right? In the cross country house. The guy had a sense of humor like a comedian. He was just a funny guy, good hard runner. And I always tell people, when you know someone's athletic or not, some of us just adapt to training quicker than others. And I always use the example of Donnie. Donnie could lift weights for 4 weeks and you saw a physical change. It was like, damn, man, you are ripping. And I could lift weights, or maybe you too, for 6 months. And people would go, hey, when are you going to start lifting?
Yeah.
I mean, he just had to adapt to physical activity in a big way. And so the great story at IUP was summer vacation of 76. He goes to the shore and he gets a job as a garbage man. So what are you doing with garbage? You're just lifting cans all day, right? And on days when he was out partying and was too lazy to get up, the guy knew where he lived. So he'd come by the house, honk the horn, Freelon, get your ass out here, right? And so he'd be back on the garbage truck. So he shows up that fall at the CC house for practice. And Fry takes one look at me and goes, I guess you'll be doing fall track this year. Might as well go join Doc and the boys. Because he'd put on probably 20, 25 pounds, but he was ripped. He was just strong. So as he starts training with those guys, suddenly they realize, hey, this guy can not only do good in the 800, but he can do good in the 400. And suddenly he's a 48-second 400 guy. You put him on a relay with Steele and Wooding and Shunk, and they become All-Americans, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, hats off to him. Then after graduation, for some reason, he never really put his degree into work. And I think he was hanging out with Todd Esmond maybe in the Rochester area for a while. Right when I got home from Boston in 1981, I get a letter. Hey, Kerry, I've gotten back into running some. I'm going to run the Cleveland Marathon and want to qualify for Boston. So I immediately pick up the phone, call his mom, say, hey, where's Donnie living? I want to go up and meet him in Cleveland and pace him through it. So anyway, I get him on the phone. I go, hey, listen, I'm going to run Wheeling. There's that real brutal race in Wheeling with they just crush you on the hills.
Yeah.
So I go there on a Saturday. It's 80 plus degrees, brutal day, hit the banquet afterwards, and then get in my car and beeline it to Cleveland. We take Bushy out to dinner and go, okay, this is what we're going to do. It's going to be hot as hell tomorrow. We're going to take our time, but we're going to get you under. And for some reason at Boston that year, they handed out painter's hats with a big shamrock. I know it might have been New Balance or Nike, one of the companies in Boston across the front. So I brought that painter's hat. And so we'd run along, and as we would hit aid stations, for some reason they had ice cubes. So we'd fill the thing with ice cubes. And I'd wear it for one aid station, then I'd give it to him. He'd wear it for the next one. Then he'd wear it, then I'd wear it, back and forth. And suddenly we get to 20-mile mark. He had his shoe kept coming untied. So 20-mile mark, he goes down to tie his shoe. I look at my watch. I go, you tie that damn shoe really good because we're not stopping again. If you're serious about getting in for Boston. So we cruise in, and we ran a 2:47 on this brutally hot day. He's elated. And I think that was in that photo I showed you. Right at the finish line there, and you can see the banner for the Cleveland Marathon behind you.
Yeah.
And he was thrilled. And then after that, he got serious about it. And he runs that following January, runs a 2:27. So he goes from 2:47 to 2:27. And then at that point, the hospital I'm working at, the guy who was president of the board of the hospital, and another guy in town, built a racquetball center. And it was a racquetball fitness center. And they had me consulting with them, but they needed someone to run the fitness center. And I go, hey, I got just the person for you. I call Bushy up. I go, Bush, I got a job for you. Come on out. You can run this fitness center, and we can train while you live in Zanes. So he moved into my apartment with me.
Oh, my God.
And then that April was the Boston Marathon, which they called the Duel in the Sun. It was 82. Beardsley and Salazar ran to their death almost. They ran a 2:08. And Bushy ran a 2:24 in that heat.
Wow.
And then from then on, he just kept getting better and better. And then the time he spent in Zanesville whetted his appetite to go back and get a degree in exercise physiology. So he then that fall went back to Pitt and started a degree in exercise phys, and then continued to train. And then, if you recall, the Boston of 84, he goes 2:17, qualifies for the Olympic trials, and he qualified for both the 84 trials and then again in 88. So, yeah, what a dear friend. I just love the guy, and just good guy. And we'd stay in touch now and again. And when I'd come in and run a race in Pittsburgh, take him out to dinner and stuff. But yeah, just so sad. Just was such a great guy, man. We were even texting back just for the holiday. He and Abbott and I had a text chain going on. Something I can't remember what the subject was, but just teasing each other back and forth. But just genuinely good guy that is sorely missed by many of us, man. Going way too young. Yeah. And then just one of those many guys that just really touch your life. And he had 6 kids, wonderful kids. I met him at the funeral there. And the other thing that struck me too, man, I got to tell you, was how, to him, guys like you and me, it was Bushy because we were teammates with him, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the younger crowd who came to IUP in the 80s and early 90s, they knew him as the Olympic trial guy and the guy that was a stud that would win the Pittsburgh Marathon or be in the top 4 or 5. And so the one thing that really almost brought me to tears during the meeting people at the funeral was John Flaherty, who had trained with Donnie in the 80s and early 90s there. He actually went in when he was brain dead. He tried to get in the hospital. They wouldn't let him in the first time, but they let him in the second time. But he actually just sat in the room and talked to him and stroked his hand and stuff. And wow. I thanked him for doing that because I thought that just tore me up. And I said, thank you for doing that. Because I said, I don't know how life works when you're brain dead and life passes on or your soul goes and whatever. But I was just happy that someone who trained with him was able to get in and spend some time with him, not knowing how life works at that point. And as we move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for talking about that. I know he was important to you. He's important to a lot of people. He's an unforgettable guy.
So many funny, like I said, he was just had a great sense of humor. Wow.
Yeah, I was with him one summer trip down in Wildwood, and if he wasn't in shape, we wouldn't have gotten away from the police.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Exactly. Yeah, he was a gem, man. What a guy. Wow.
Yeah. COVID took you off the racing program, but you're still hiking. And what do you think?
Well, I'm still running. I ran 8 this morning, but I just don't feel, I don't know, just the flow of the pace. You just don't have the flow that you used to have. And trust me, I'm working at it. I got a basement full of equipment and stuff that I work out on, but yeah, it just hasn't come back like I'd hoped it would. So I'll still be knocking it out there. And I still love, yeah, like you said, the hike, to travel. Nothing like going to some of the beautiful national parks we have, or just even where I have my home here. 2 miles in one direction is the Ohio Bird Sanctuary. The end of the street, I look into the Clear Fork Reservoir. So there's beautiful trails and country roads with little traffic. I still enjoy just getting out and staying fit and healthy. Just a wholesome joy and beauty to just loping down the country road or lakeside trail and staying fit and healthy.
I think Someone ought to get a prescription pad and recommend an hour talking to Kerry Green. Anytime you're not feeling good, you're an uplifting person. It's great to hear your stories and your enthusiasm, see your face, everything. So it's great spending time with you, Kerry.
Thank you, Clank. I really appreciate it, man.
You have some expertise. What is there something you want to talk to peers of the time or any other runners who might hear this? What's your best advice?
Yeah, I would just say a few things. Number one is, you got to plan for what I call slow, steady progress. And in that slow, steady progress, get to know your amazing body, because at some point you're going to have an injury here or there. So get to know the stretches, the strengthening exercises you can do to, one, hope prevent injuries, but if you do get injured, come back from it in a healthy way. And then also realize that the rules change as you age. And so the rules in my case would be cut back your mileage. Don't get into streaking where you're trying to run 7 days a week or 6 days a week. 4 or 5 days a week keeps you healthy. Try and throw in a little bit of speed work here and there. And it's always good to find a good cross-training activity, because at some point you're going to be injured and you need to maybe bike a little bit or use a stair climber or elliptical, or aqua activities are really good. For a lot of years here, because I started fitness centers for the hospitals I worked at, I would also teach classes like spin classes or some of the aqua. I taught a class called Aqua Explosion, was basically doing like plyometrics in a pool. Because plyometrics are one thing when you're in your 20s and 30s, but when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, it's a different impact on the body. So to do those things in a pool gives you a benefit without having the impact factor. And then the final thing would be just give rest and recovery truly the respect that they need, because you can't just go out and pound every day and think it's going to work out. You got to give that. And then I'll leave you with the final thought: just count your blessings daily and try to meet every challenge that comes your way. Because again, Bush is a good example. We just never know how long we're going to be here, and you want to make the most of it. So be thankful for the health that you have and the beauty of nature, to go out and enjoy it. And also to appreciate your friendships. And I certainly appreciate your friendship through the years, Matt. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's great to get this recorded. I know you've been interviewed a lot of times, and wait, let's tell people about the movie you were in. You're a movie star.
That's a whole other story. Yeah. It's called Marathon Fever. Do you really want to go into this?
Yeah, let's get Marathon Fever story.
Okay, as quick as we can do. So a guy shows up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. He was working for, I believe, CBS in New York, the television network, but he was trying to make a name for himself in making films. And he wanted to do, because the running boom was at its peak right around then, he wanted to do a marathon, but he knew he didn't want a major marathon. He did not want a college town. He wanted a small town marathon, and he wanted unique people that were different. So he put an ad in the paper, and he got a grandmother who was going to run her first marathon. You know how every reality show has the eccentric person? He got an eccentric lawyer from town. And then there happened to be a doctor from, I believe, the Virginia area, that would come to the Johnstown Marathon with his 5 and 6 year old kids. One was a daughter, the other was a son, and he would run the marathon. So I got to meet him, because when he went to the YMCA explaining is what he wanted to do, they said, "Oh, you want to meet John Hess and Kerry Green and Steve Molnar?" So we all went for a run with him, and I invited him back to the house and had a breakfast with him and stuff. And I was working at one of the mills there, and I just said, "Hey, I'd be happy to help you if you need help moving, getting around town, running for lunch for you, or getting where you need to be." So when he came back into town to shoot the pre-scenes with all these people, he was excited to have someone that knew the town and get him around. So I just changed my shift from like a first shift or second shift to third shift, so I'd be available during the day, and he'd bring in a sound man and a cameraman and all that. So I'd just be like a gopher, just get what they need, help set stuff up and whatnot. So anyways, then I go off to grad school, and suddenly at grad school one day, it was like mid-September, the phone rings, and it's a hall phone, like down the hall. "Hey, Kerry, there's someone on the phone here from New York." "I don't know one from New York." "Okay, come down." And it's Steve Alpert. And he said, "Hey, Kerry, this is Steve." He goes, "Hey, I've been showing all this footage I have to a producer who I really respect." And he said, "You know what, Steve?" He goes, "You've got someone that's going to finish in the middle of the marathon and someone who's going to finish at the end. But," he goes, "you don't have anyone that's going to finish up front. And to really round this up, you really need that." So he said, "Are you running Johnstown this year?" I said, "I am, simply because I don't have 2 nickels to rub together. I can't go to New York or whatever." So he goes, "Would you be my hometown winner guy, supposedly?" Like, I can't tell you I'm going to win it, but I said, "I'm going to run it anyway, so I'll be up in the top 5 anyway. So I agreed to do that. Here comes the Johnstown Marathon. They run the thing pretty much with a camera in your face the whole way. And there were 3 of us that went out front, a guy named Mark Parker, and then DC Noakes from Johnstown and myself. And then I broke away at the 5-mile mark. And then at a little beyond halfway, Mark Parker catches up with me and goes on to win the thing. And then when he puts it all together, they have a premiere at one of the Johnstown theaters there. And he sent me, I couldn't make it because I was assistant coach and we were doing our spring track break, getting away to Florida that time. So I didn't go back to the premiere. To end the story, this is the best ending I can give you. The way the thing ends is they come to me and they go, Kerry, how'd your race go? And I said, I ran as best I could. A guy from State College won the thing named Mark Parker. And I said, he ran a great race and hats off to Mark. And that's where it winds up. So then fast forward 30 years, okay? And I hadn't thought about marathon fever in a long time. And I'm watching a show on Nike. And they're going through how Phil Knight started and the air shoes and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden they break away to, and now the new CEO of Nike just announced is Mark Parker. And I look at the guy and I'm going, I know that guy. Despite the aging times and the weight gain and all that, I go, I know who that guy is. And so the guy that won Marathon Fever spent, I think, over 10 years as the CEO. When Phil Knight retired, he turned it over to Mark to run the show. So, again, circle of life, weird things, right?
I was thinking that a subtitle for this talk we had was High on Life, but Marathon Fever might be just the right title.
There you go. There you go.
All right.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it, man.
I hope you enjoyed this talk with Kerry Green as much as I did. And I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.